I think a very interesting section here, which is jurisprudence and politics. One of the things that modern Muslims have really come to believe is that Islam is a political philosophy, which is very interesting because that at essence is the claim of Zionism. Zionism turned Judaism into a political philosophy. And one of the signs of the end of time is the Prophet ﷺ said that you will follow Bani Israel and you will become like Bani Israel. And so just as Bani Israel wanted a Zionist state, there are now modern Muslims that want this thing called an Islamic state. And an Islamic state is the idea that you can force people to be good Muslim, which is a completely insane idea. It's never existed and it will never exist. If you think religion can be legislated by a government, you're completely deluded. It's a delusional state, and I have no other word for it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do you think you can force people to be believers? تُكْرِهُ النَّاسَ عَلَى أَن يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do you think you can force people to believe? It doesn't work. Islam is an internal mechanism. The best thing a government can do is to provide as close as possible a court system that is not open to briberies and not open to... But even the Prophet ﷺ said, out of 3 judges, 2 go to hell, which is bad odds. And that is why traditionally Muslim scholars never wanted to be judges. And that is why all 4 of the imams were completely apolitical. They were not involved in politics. The only political stand that Ahmad ibn Hanbal took was actually not a political stand. It was related to Aqidah, because he declared openly that the Quran was uncreated, because the Mu'tazilite had convinced the ruling party that the Quran was created, and it was just a stupid period. People did some really stupid things. But Abu Hanifa refused to enter into politics and was imprisoned for it. Imam Malik, if you read the entire Mudawwana, does not have one political statement. He was once accused of sympathizing with Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah, who was one of the family of the Prophet that led a rebellion in the Hijaz. But he didn't have political positions. All he was doing was teaching Sharia. If you want to learn it and apply it, marhaban. If you don't, good luck in the akhirah. And that is the way the religion has to be. It has to be free of politics. Once the scholar becomes engaged in the political process, he's corrupted by it. Because that's the nature of the world. It's a corrupting element. And so you don't want religion to be tainted by the temporal. You always want religion to have that atemporal quality to it. And that's why Islam did not create a priesthood or create an ecclesiastical society. The idea is that every believer should try to be as close to God as he can or she can. So you don't want a group of priests dictating for you things. No, and the scholar, anybody can become a scholar. There's no ordainment. Scholars, if they're really rooted and trained, can have difference of opinion. So there's no official church theory. The Pope says, no, you all have to agree with me. No, the ulama differ. One of them says this, another says that. And people are deemed intelligent enough and with enough common sense to be able to discern right and wrong in a healthy society. This modern concept is really unfortunate. It's just had a really bad effect on the Muslims, because what happens is if these guys get into power, they'll be just as bad as the previous government, if not worse. And it's as simple as that. They'll create the same intelligence mechanisms, and they'll do the torture, and they'll do all this. They'll do the same thing. As simple as that. And if you don't think this country has it, we have it. It just doesn't happen in the same way. The School of the Americas, that's what they did. They trained people to torture and do all that stuff. But they do it in South America. They do it in the Middle East. That's why some of these Qaeda guys, they want to interrogate them in other countries. Right? So they can put the electrodes on and do all that stuff and feel good about it, because it didn't happen inside the United States. Fuqaha can become like lawyers everywhere. Jurists know how to manipulate the law for their own ends, and there have always been jurists who would sell their skills to the powers that be. Every king has had an official mullah or two who was willing to issue whatever Islamic edicts were necessary for the government to function in the way the king desired. So it still goes on. And that's why Muslims always saw that scholars that were aligned with government rulers or government leaders that were in their pay and things like that, to visit them, to speak the truth to them, that's encouraged. An alim should go, and if he's able to, tell the truth to an oppressor or to a ruler. And most rulers are oppressors in some way or another. That's encouraged. But to become a court mullah, or the real scholars fled from that like they would flee from a lion, because they knew what it meant. And then in our view of things, politics was never a very important issue for the vast majority of Muslims throughout history, like most people. Many Muslim thinkers were intensely interested in establishing social harmony and equilibrium on the basis of Sharia, but they did not see this as something that should or could be instituted from above. And that's the truth. I mean, you look at all these ulama and read their books. They never saw the idea that you could institute ethics or morality in a society. Ethics and morality comes from families. It comes from the way you were raised. It comes from how your parents taught you, and whether you're going to live up to those ideals and morals that they gave you. And in bad societies, parents don't have ethics or morals to transmit to their children. A lot of the world now, there's very little real ethical and moral behavior because people aren't raised with those ideals anymore. They see their parents cheating and doing all these things, and that's what they end up doing. So simple as that.